Hello everyone and welcome to today's presentation. My name's Haydon. I'm one of the financial advisors and partners at Castlefield. We're going to talk to you today about 10 basic steps when planning your finances. And I'll be talking to my colleague, Olivia. How are you, Olivia?
I'm fine, thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. I've been at Castlefield for 10 years now, which isn't quite as long as you, is it, Haydon? And prior to that, I've always worked in ethical financial advice, and I've been doing it for over 20 years. So I've seen a lot of different client circumstances in that time, as have you. So hopefully we'll have some good things to discuss today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we'll touch upon some of our experiences. So yeah, should we get going?
Great.
Okay, the first thing to think about when you're planning your finances is to set aside some cash for emergency use, often called rainy day money. Typically, we would say put aside something that will cover your outgoings for about 6 months. And this would cover things, you know, such as if you had a domestic appliances breakdown or just day-to-day emergencies. But it might not necessarily always need to be a 6-month guide figure. It could be more, could be less. Olivia, when you talk to your clients, when you have new clients through the door and you discuss this, what sort of guidance do you give them?
Yeah, it's very personal, isn't it? So some people might be self-employed and really need enough money to cover themselves for the variable income that may or may not be coming in during the year. For other people with a very secure income, they may feel that even 6 months worth is a bit too much. I've had clients who felt that £10,000 was sufficient to hold on deposit. I've had other clients who feel that anything less than £300,000 isn't enough. So it is a very personal choice, but generally speaking, 6 months is a really good guideline, as you've said, Haydon.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I mean, we do guide and advise clients, of course, but we always take on board what their personal feelings are. I'm the same. I've got one client, and she's very well off, but she chooses to keep £200,000 in cash in the bank, which is fine. That's good for her. I think you need to be wary when you get those other clients that are prepared to invest everything, and you kind of have to warn them off. But yeah, no, it's good. It's a good starting point. So let's assume you've decided on a figure, your rainy day money, you've put it in the bank, you've put it somewhere safe where you can access it quickly and easily. The second thing that we'd recommend you do is to check what you spend. What do we mean by that, Olivia, when we think check what you spend?
This is really an expenditure exercise, isn't it? So writing down how much you tend to spend each month. Some people have a really good sense of this, but most of us don't. And if you don't go through the actual exercise, and we've got a spreadsheet, haven't we, a template to help, but it just breaking down what your bills are, what you tend to spend on food, whether you've got what your mortgage costs are. And there's always got to be discretionary spending. So we tend to talk about fixed expenditure, what has to go out every month just to keep the wheels on the road. And then discretionary spending, which might be on clothes and haircuts and things which aren't essential, but most people tend to need that money.
Yeah, no, it's a curious one. What you said there is I've found the very same experience, that you have some clients that keep their own spreadsheets and they're very meticulous, and when they come through the door and join us, it's like Christmas Day. It's fantastic. But other clients, not so much. And it's not such a bad idea if you don't generally, but you would need to do it if you're really going to get a handle on your finances. Typically, there might be clients that run their own businesses, and money just seems to go in a big pot, and it's all a bit of a mixed blur. But yeah, as you said, we've got spreadsheets that we've used, but there are ways and means that you can do things. Other complications are things such as, I have clients say, well, I need to replace my car every so often. What do I do about that? Well, just try and think of what an average amount is. So if you're going to spend a certain amount every so many years, how much does that work out per annum, per month? So yeah, good. I mean, you come along as a client, that's the type of thing we'll help you do, but you can do it on your own. Okay, so you've put some rainy day money aside. You've made a note of what your outgoings are. The third thing to think about we'll give you a quick high level couple of pieces of information on this is financial protection, personal protection. What do we mean by personal protection?
So this is really life cover, income protection. So most of us at some point in our lives, we need to protect ourselves or our families or our income from worst case scenarios. And the good news is life cover is really cheap because most of us are going to survive to retirement. Income protection protects your income if you're ill and unable to work for a long time. And that's more expensive because you are more likely to fall ill and be unable to work. So the value of these policies are well worth considering as soon as you have a mortgage, for example.
Yeah, it's personal protection. It's an interesting one, and I guess as a general rule of thumb, the younger you are, the more important it is. If you've got modest savings, a large mortgage, children, then putting personal protection in place is critical, because if you were to suffer a long-term illness and couldn't work, for example, you could be in real financial straits. Whereas often we're helping clients that are older, they've saved a lot of money, they might have good pension income. In those circumstances, sometimes they don't need any personal protection at all. Indeed, sometimes they come along and they say, I'm paying this great big premium for this protection policy. And it might be the case they don't actually need it, and they can cancel it and save the money. So it's very particular to individual circumstances, but it's something to be aware of.
One point to note on that.
Sorry,
Haydon. One point to note on that is also you should consider, particularly with life cover, whether it needs to be in trust or not. Because depending on the point of the life cover, it can be quite important that that's looked at.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've put rainy day money in place. We've got a fantastic idea of how much we're spending. We've reviewed our protection policy and we've put stuff in place that fits. Okay, we want to save money for the future. Give me some ideas. What's a good plan in terms of how you can save the future? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so generally speaking, it's 10 to 15% of earnings throughout your working life. If you do that, you're likely to have a really healthy retirement income. And that's not always possible. We quite often find people can't save in their 20s because they're just not earning enough. And equally then, women in particular might work part-time because of caring duties or stop work altogether for a number of years, in which case then when you are earning again or earning more, you need to step up the amount that you're saving.
Yeah, it's a curious one. It is one of those where you can say that you'll save what you can afford, but there are temptations in your way to not do that, and absolutely there are circumstances when you just can't do it. And then, excuse me, ironically, later in life, you've probably got a bit more disposable income. But if you can save early, the other thing to remember is that if you invest it wisely, it has plenty of time to grow, and it can be worth a lot more when you come to draw on that money the earlier you invest. But yeah, 10%, it's not for everyone, but as a general rule of thumb, if you do that from as early as you can, probably going to be okay.
And I'll share an anecdote with you, which when I first started working at a financial planning firm as an administrator, and I didn't earn much, but because I worked in this firm, I thought, well, I need to start saving. So I started with a £10 a month friendly society plan. So it was set up for 10 years. And of course, after the first couple of months, I didn't really notice that £10 a month going out. And then after 10 years, I got a tax-free lump sum of about 1,500 quid. And it hadn't grown dramatically, but it was a discipline because once I committed to it, I had to pay him for 10 years. Otherwise, it was a pointless exercise. It was a really small amount, and yet I got 1,500 quid almost out of the blue. And I've kept on doing those little savings plans even now, just because I love that moment where you get it's like a freebie every 10 years. No,
you're absolutely right. It's powerful. I mean, we often talk about investment growth with clients. Of course we do, but just that ability to put money away is just as powerful as any investment growth you'll get. Okay, looks like we're getting through some good stuff here. But this is point number 5. This is a big one. This is what we do when we help clients. It's about setting goals. So in financial terms, Olivia, what do we mean about setting goals?
It's what you want to achieve in the short term, the medium term, and the long term. And often the conversation starts not with about money really, but about lifestyle and what you need. Money is a means to an end, really. It's not an end in itself. So how do you envisage your short-term future, your medium-term future, and your long-term future? And what do we need to help you put in place to achieve that lifestyle that you desire?
Yeah, it's a curious one that it can be tricky when you set goals. And one thing that is important is to think that they're a holistic situation. Now, by holistic, what that means is that one goal can impact on another goal, and sometimes they can push against each other. So one typical example that I come across a lot is that I may have a single client or a couple, and they've got no children, and they're worried about long-term care. So they want to put aside long-term care, money for long-term care, and they save lots of money. Then on the other hand, they might get to retirement and think, I want to spend some of this money, enjoy myself. And so what do? How do they decide how much they need to keep, how much they can spend? So it's quite a detailed debate, isn't it? And an ongoing thing that we talk to clients about and help them decide upon the different goals and juggle things. And as you said, yeah, timescales are key and critical. So retirement is an obvious one. You can treat that as a subject in its own right and then put some plans in place that match that as a specific goal, and then work beyond that just to integrate other goals. It might be helping children when they go to university or all sorts of different things. But yeah, just sitting down, taking your time to set your goals in terms of what do I want to do in my life, and then you can fit some numbers around that later. Okay, we'll move on. Point number 6. Tax. Tax, Olivia. Is tax a good thing? Is tax a bad thing? What do we think about tax?
Well, it's our civic duty to pay tax, of course. And our clients want to maybe avoid paying excessive tax, let's say, but understand that it's a natural part of life. But we do help clients use their tax allowances, of course. And there are basic things you can do, like using your ISA allowances as well, but it can get quite complicated when you're looking at pension contributions, particularly for higher rate and additional rate taxpayers. And this is the sort of thing that we help clients with on a daily basis. Another thing to mention, not a lot of people know about, is the third-party pension contributions that you can make on behalf of your children or your grandchildren. So there's no benefit to the person paying the pension contributions, but you can set up pensions for minors, and the pensions get 20% tax relief on each contribution. And I've set them up for my children because then I think that money's going to be invested for 40, 50 years, even if I'm not putting large sums away. Again, as you said earlier, Haydon, it's going to be invested for such a long time.
Yeah, no, what you said at the start is absolutely right. I mean, generally our clients think tax is an important part of any civilized society. You need it there to pay for education and the NHS and whatever. But especially when you've saved for the whole of your life and you've already contributed a lot in tax, I think it's totally acceptable to think, perhaps I want to save a bit of inheritance tax. It's common. I have lots of clients that are happy to pay a certain degree of tax, but come on, let's keep a bit of a lid on this. So that's the type of discussion that we have with people and integrate what their thoughts are on that and to what extent they want us to help them. We never do anything crazy. Some of these ridiculous schemes where people are there just to try and avoid paying tax when they're millionaires and all that sort of stuff. We're completely against that type of stuff. But yeah, absolutely, as you said, basic steps, taking advantage of your ISA allowance, junior ISA allowances, pension allowances, different types of allowance, capital gains tax. I think that's all part of what you do. I mean, if you're going to plan this stuff yourself, just taking advantage of those basic things is really good. If you want to do something a bit more sophisticated, you probably need some professional help with that. Okay, let's move on. Point number 7, investment risk. Now, if I had £1 for every time I've spoken about investment risk with clients, tell me more. Investment risk, Olivia, what's it all about?
So investment risk is about how much risk you're willing to take with your investments, of course, and that leads on to a discussion about volatility and timescales. And generally speaking, the more risk you're willing to take, the higher the potential returns over the long term. Otherwise, why would anybody bother? Everyone would invest in a low risk fashion, in a sense, if there was no reward for investing in a higher risk fashion. And we help clients determine what their risk profile is. If you're deciding for yourself, you need to think very carefully about timescales and how long that money can remain invested for.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely fits your personal circumstances, and it's both a mathematical type thing. You know, you have to understand that if you invest money for a certain period in certain products, certain investments, then you can look at past data to say there's a possibility that you might lose X amount of money. You know, you look at past data, you invest in this way, and you could lose 30% of this in a really bad year. And you have to be aware of that and accept it, or if you don't accept it, take less risk. And as you said, timescales are important. So if you're investing for your retirement, and that might be 30 years ago, you can take a bit more investment risk. If you put something that's stock market based, doesn't perform well for a period, you've got plenty of time for that to come back. But if it's a short-term thing, you know, for example, you're going to buy a house in 3 years' time and you've already saved a big deposit, we would never recommend you take, you know, any investment risk with that. You keep that in the bank, because if something happens 3 months before you buy a house, you're in trouble, aren't you? You haven't got time for it to recover. So that's key. I think the other point about investment risk is that there is a risk of not taking any risk, isn't there? If you just leave the money in the bank, I mean, what's the problem with doing that?
Well, that's inflation risk. So the cost of living is going up all the time, and interest rates on cash on deposit are really low at the moment, and they generally lower than the pace of inflation. So even when interest rates were 5%, inflation was running at about that or slightly higher. So where you have money in the bank, although it's very secure in that it's not going to change its value, it's not going to go down in value in theory, the cost of living is going up all the time. So what you can buy with that money each year reduces. And that is a real risk for people who don't invest and just keep all their money in the bank or building society. And of course, then the Financial Services Compensation Scheme will only cover you up to £85,000. So if you've got more than that in one bank, if that bank fails, you may only get £85,000 back.
Yeah, absolutely. So as seems to be the case with lots of financial planning, it is about the juggling act and decent planning. At the start of this conversation, we spoke about putting rainy day money, which we would say put in cash. So you've got that risk that in real terms it's going to lose value, but there are other reasons still to do that. But then you have to decide on that juggling act between how much do I keep rainy day money, etc., keep myself safe. It's losing a bit of real term value, won't be able to buy so much in the future, versus how much do I invest, and then when I invest it, what risk do I take? And you can apply different risk profiles to different things. So you might take a bit more risk with your pension, for example, than you would with, you know, more medium-term investments. Okay, we'll move on. So, I mean, of course, we do this as a profession, but if you want to do it yourself, research is important, right?
I'd say so. Yeah, absolutely. And you can read the FT can be a bit of a challenge to read if you're, unless you're really interested. But most of the broadsheets have, money sections at the weekend, which are often useful. And there's an organisation called Good with Money, and they have a newsletter and a website, and they focus on how to be responsible with your personal finances. They do a really good job of educating people about pensions and ethical investment funds and the like.
Yeah, I mean, there's a myriad of guys out there. I mean, government-based one is the Money Advice Service. So that's a really good place to start, because it's going to be impartial. It's going to just tell you the facts. I mean, some of the stuff out there you've got to be wary of, because there's usually a company behind it trying to promote something. So, you've got to be wary sometimes if stuff's a little bit biased. But yeah, take your time, read this stuff, download some literature, buy a book and all that stuff. It's all out there.
Or read our blog, of course, on our website.
Of course. What do you mean, just the blog? There's so much information on our website. It's, plug. Okay, now this next area. Now, what we haven't touched on today. This is the discussion point we'll have at another one of these broadcasts. But we'll just touch on it just lightly today. That a lot of our clients, in particular, when they're planning, they like to think about other people with the money they've got. What do we mean by that?
Well, we call it thoughtful investing, don't we, Haydon?
We do.
It's really about the impact, understanding the impact that your money has in the world. So we all I like to make a profit, of course, from our investments, but our clients want to do that in a responsible manner. And we have our own in-house assessment when we're looking at investments called our BEST framework. And that stands for business, environment, social, and transparency. So whenever we are looking at investments for clients, we assess them on that framework.
Okay, so that's great. I mean, we'll get into that in more detail another day about how we actually drill down into the underlying investments. But I guess the other aspect about thinking of others is that sometimes people, especially if they've come into a lot of money, maybe they've inherited a lot of money and they're quite financially secure, they almost feel guilty they've got so much money. And they think about, who's more needy than I am? What are the charitable causes out there? So that's a difficult balancing act sometimes, because you might have this chunk of money and think, look, I want to keep some of this for myself. I need to support myself in old age, etc., and help my family. But I probably don't need all of this money. So what can I do to give it away, and how much can I afford to give away? So we work with clients, don't we, a lot to do that. I know you've got some very big you can't say it. Charity-orientated clients. You'll say the word better than I can.
Yeah.
Philanthropic.
Yeah. Absolutely. And a key part of it is how much can they afford to give away, as you touched on, Haydon. And then what's the most tax efficient way of doing that? Should it be in a great big chunk, or should it be annually? And then those gifts, if they're from cash, can be offset against income. Or should they gift shares that have large, or investment funds that have accrued large capital gains? And there's an interaction there with income tax as well. So it can get quite complicated. But the starting point is how much can they afford to give away? And then also, where should they give it to? So we've been working more closely in recent times with philanthropy advisors who it's a role where they know the charitable world and get to know the client and their interests, and then match that client to charities that need that level of donation. And it's an ongoing discussion really between the client and the philanthropy advisor and the onward charities about how much to give and when and that sort of thing. And it can really enhance our client's relationship with their money, because they can see the good that it's doing, and it makes them feel positive about their wealth.
Yeah, no, I found that when you get clients that have got this mental dilemma, once you help them and guide them and say, look, we recommend that you should keep a figure of X plus some contingency in case the worst happens, then they feel at ease. They feel at ease with keeping that money. And then they get extra, self-satisfaction from doing the good stuff with the extra money that they've got. So it's great. It's great. Okay, now let's move on to point number 10. whether you should seek advice or not. What do you think, Olivia?
Well, we always say, don't we, that if you don't have the time or the skill or the inclination, then that's when a financial advisor might be suitable for you. So although it's not rocket science what we do, it can be quite complicated, but it is possible to learn the skills yourself if you're interested and if you have the time. And it's really, if you don't have the time or the skill or the inclination, that it may well be that it's time to appoint a professional to help you out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like anything in life, isn't it? You can choose to do things yourself, but often when you employ a professional and you pay the fees involved, then you know you're going to get that expertise and it might save you all that time and hassle. So it's a difficult call to make, but certainly something to think about. Okay, I think we're about done for today. Thank you for joining me, both the people that are watching this and Olivia. I hope you found it useful. So this was our 10 basic steps to planning your finances. If you're interested, do look on our website. We've got other guides available. And one good step on from this one is we've got 10 ways that a financial advisor can help you, which goes into a little bit more detail about the things that we do with our clients. Other than that, yeah, do get in touch. Have you found this enjoyable, Olivia?
I have, thank you very much, and hope to do another one with you before too long.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks everyone. Goodbye.